Welcome to YourTown. I'm Chef Wendy Brodie with Art of Food, and my guest today is a wonderful friend and an incredible flower artist, Reina Ramirez with Floral designed by Reina. Welcome, Reina. It's so wonderful to have you.
Oh, thank you for this opportunity, Wendy.
Even though I'm sort of the culinary, or I'll expand it, hospitality host, flowers are such an incredible kind of silent part of our life and our well-being, like plants and gardens and food. And so to have the flower artist sort of separate from the chefs is almost, we're all part of each other during events. And so that's why your artistry that I've savored over the years, and I say savor visually and because flowers are edible too, which as you know, I try and find all those. But I want the tips from you. I want your inspiration, how you got started in this, and I'll keep feeding you questions. But how did you begin your love of flowers?
I was in ag classes, and a very small amount of it was flowers, and I knew right then. I fell in love. It's like, this is what I want to do. So I did that for friends for years, and my kids grew up, and once they didn't need me around anymore, I started my company 20 years ago. So this year, it's 20 years.
I can't believe it. I was telling Chef Tim that I'll be always, forever grateful to Marcy Bracco. She came over, and her thank you gift to me was the most incredible arrangement by you. And the name of our place is Zenwood, so we have a lot of Oriental type influences there. And your arrangement with this gorgeous sort of Zen burgundy curved vase, beautiful, with orchids or cymbidiums and calla lilies, I think you had both, that were woven in the curve. Well, it's emblazoned in my brain forever.
Thank you. And it's so awesome whenever people give me information.
And that was 20 years ago. Sorry about that.
So Marcy told me about your beautiful home and the influence of, and I love that design. So I got to go crazy on it, which was fun.
Well, and then to be able to follow your work in various hotels, I think the Highlands Inn is one, and
Intercontinental.
And different storefronts. I walk by in Carmel, and I think that's a Reina. Your style is so distinctive and forever changing. Always the latest, most incredible things, whether it's copper wires that are woven with a dangling orchid or whatever. But oh gosh, there's so much I want to ask you. I don't know where to begin. But I'll share one more incredible piece that I remember that you let me borrow. You had done a sample for the Masters of Food and Wine, I think, and it was a pussy willow, almost an umbrella, covered with moss, a whole incredible environment that you put over a table, so all of us, or portion of us, were just, our eyes were up, but we weren't blocked, and there were dangling orchids and moss, and I've never gotten over that one either.
That was so much fun. I love that if it can feel like you can see over it, but it envelops you. Flowers should be a part of the whole thing. The fragrance and it's how it makes you feel.
Well, you once told me the importance, or define the importance of flowers in your life. And maybe you can share that. I can't remember exactly, but it changed no more fake flowers, maybe dried ones.
It's true, because the French have it down. You know, you get your food, bread, wine, and your flowers. And having them in with you all the time, it actually changes the chemical makeup in your brain up to 17 points so that you remember more. Put it near a child's head while they're studying. That whenever, and that's the reason we want to have them at funerals. It lifts our spirit. Whenever we have it with food, it accentuates all that we're seeing in the food. And whenever we are having weddings, whenever you smell that fragrance again, that's that particular rose, or maybe, using rosemary in your wedding, that when you smell that again, it brings it back, and you can visualize your wedding again. So in all aspects of our life, we even, we garden, your beautiful garden, we want to see flowers around us. And I'm an advocate for have flowers around you all the time, give gifts, and there's access to so many flowers now also.
Oh, I love that, and I think it's important to restate it raises our brain and 17 points.
Yes. Yeah.
Not that I scientifically know what that means,
but it helps us remember. Yes.
That's critical. So the older we get, the more flowers we need. Oh, I like that. I like that. My husband will like that too. Now, back to my first beautiful arrangement that I received. When people get an arrangement, how can they keep it longer? What do we need to do to extend the life of it rather than just look at it and move it from place to place?
Yes, and that's really good if you're in a real hot area, which we're not.
Yeah. Let's talk about locally here.
Okay, great. And if you make sure it's hydrated, so a squirt bottle is great, squirting the top of it. But if it's in a container that's like glass, it's easy, a container that you can dump the water out, or even in the sink, let the water run over the flowers and change out the water. It's going to help keep it clean, because what kills the plant flowers are bacteria that get in the water. So keeping that as clean as possible. You don't even have to worry about putting really anything in it, but just making sure the water's clean and spraying it a lot. And if you have like your heater on this time of year, it might be good. You can pop them out in the garage, or even if it's raining, you can let them get a drink that way. But just keeping it really moist, and then as you can kind of work on it too. There are flowers that only last 6 days, and there are flowers that last 2 weeks. So as you can take flowers out, and it'll still look good, and then you can keep it going that way.
I mean, can you mention some that, like if we're shopping and buying something at the local grocery store, or anyway, wherever we're buying our flowers, what ones last longer and versus ones that may only last a few days?
Roses are great, and if you can get the flowers tight, so roses that aren't open very much, they are newer, so that's a really good one. Also, cutting those roses clean again. Whenever any flowers you get from a store, cut them again and put them in fresh water for a bit before you start arranging them. They need to hydrate. They do a good job at the stores, but that will help it last longer. Orchids are great. Dahlias, most of them don't last more than 6 days. And you can take even plants. You know, you can take plants from the grocery store also and cut them like hydrangeas. You want to stick their heads under water and let them hydrate that way as you cut them off of the stem. Just making sure that the flowers aren't open and are as tight as possible, that'll help, because if it's already been in the store 3 or 4 days, it's not going to last that much longer.
Interesting. I remember you telling me, and I've done it ever since, that with roses, well, sometimes the heads they just plunk over in a few days. That whether it's a bathtub or a bus tub or laundry tub or hotel pan in my case, just laying them flat and letting certain flowers drink from their heads was completely new to me, and now I do that with some of my tulips. If they look a little weak or something, they come right back after, and let alone the hydrangeas.
And the tulips are really fun because they're a bulb, and most bulbs, you can let the tulips wilt a little bit and put them in a very unique shape, and then when you put water back in it, they get hard again. And so that's how we sneakily do some really unique things with tulips.
Wow. And is that the same with like a lot of the colored calla lilies that you've done? Or do you use wire for those? I can't remember.
Yeah, wires are really pretty, but there's a part of the calla lily, if you hold it, there's a flat part of the stem, and you can run your finger along the edge, and it'll keep twisting and twisting and twisting until it starts making a shape. And you just have to kind of get it in the right spot. And so calla lilies, you can do that without doing anything to it other than slowly like massaging it, and it'll go in shape.
Well, one of the things that we talked about that would be fun to share with the guests is if they have gone to the store, how do they go about making some fun and different arrangements? And what is kind of the step-by-step that they can do for a dinner party?
That's a great
or a
question.
Lunch party.
Usually you want this area to be open so that you can see across the table. You can go very thin and high or low, but it's really great to do things that are out of the box. So if you have a beautiful set of china, maybe use the soup tureen, or you could use if you're not using the cups that night, and it's a luncheon, you can use the little cups. But also, anything is fair game. If you have antiques, if you have a wonderful old gnarly piece of wood that has an indentation in it, and foam is a really great thing to help you. There are different types of foam, but you don't want to breathe that in, so maybe hydrating those in a really large or outdoor area.
What are those called? Like Oasis or whatever, the square green blocks?
Yes, foam. And if you don't want to use any of that or have that in your house, you can tape across a bowl like in a grid shape, and then that will hold up the flowers.
Oh, interesting.
And there's so many things at like Michael's and things that you can buy floral supplies, and on Amazon and stuff like that. So you can buy floral tape. It doesn't damage the containers usually, and it comes right off, but it'll give it a good structure. And the old-fashioned way of doing it is in beautiful metal antique frogs. They have ones with spikes. They have ones that are actually grids you put down in a vase, which are really fun. And there's no end to things that you can try.
And what about, you were mentioning about fragrances, and so people who are, let's say, into wines and having exquisite wines, I never thought of this, but you were suggesting they be cautious because...
Yes, because that wonderful taste of wine, just like how you pair it with food, a lot of flowers have fragrances that will change that flavor of that wine, and even of food, but more so of wine. So when we're doing a wine event, we are very careful to use maybe roses, and you can smell them. The regular roses, not garden roses, they have less smell. And there are flowers, there are certain orchids that are very fragrant, and then there are ones that aren't. Anemones, beautiful little garden flowers, as long as you smell them, and if you're doing some really great wines that you want people, and maybe doing a pairing with each course, you would want to make sure that those flowers don't have any fragrance.
That was a really interesting tip that it never occurred to me. I know going to things that I don't wear perfume at wine events, and I guess that's for the same reason. Yeah. Or else it's very subtle. But then you don't get to the bouquet of the wine, the experience. Yeah, I can see where that would be a conflict. Then one of the other things that I learned from you that I didn't realize is different flowers, besides the history, there's a meaning and association so can you share some of those with us?
It's so interesting because the Victorian era, you would send a message in a tussie mussy or flowers, and they have different meanings now than they did then. Beautiful red roses mean love now. That's what it is. Back in the Victorian time, you wouldn't use them because it meant Christ's blood, it was sacred, but you would send, like, yellow roses meant, a fidelity, you're really thinking, but if you sent it upside down in the box, it meant absolutely the opposite message. So don't see me, I would rather not talk to you again.
Interesting.
Yes. And
wow.
So like in weddings, lavender on the, or rosemary, each one means something. Wonderful Italian weddings have rosemary, meaning I'm giving all my gifts, all the things I have, I'm giving it to you.
Wow.
Which is wonderful. Wow. And then there are funerals. In certain cultures, you can't use certain flowers. And in weddings, you can't use certain colors because they're for funerals. So it's really great to know all those. Like, we don't use white usually in Chinese weddings. But in certain funerals, we can't, like in certain bouquets, for certain cultures, we don't use certain flowers because those are only used for funerals.
Well, I just found that so fascinating, all the different meanings and so forth. And in our few remaining minutes, maybe you could share a few of the regular edible, well, gosh, I don't even know. The time has gone so quickly. But maybe you can just quickly, it's violets, roses, nasturtiums. Johnny jump ups.
Yes, pansies, wonderful pansies, all those. And the hot new thing is putting them in ice. And freezing them, and then having those within your like in your champagne bucket.
Oh, super, super. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Wendy. It's so much fun.
Yes.